Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Making It Personal is provided by Sarah Vocations Ministry. Learn more at joinserra.org.
Making It Personal with Bishop William Joensen on Iowa Catholic Radio and iowacatholicradio.com.
Welcome to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen. I'm Jeanne Thill. On today's show, we're visiting with Maria Campbell. She's the founder of Miscarriage Ministry.
It's a very poignant topic in the midst of the season when many are conscious of life they've wanted to usher into the world and have gone on to God. And so that ministry of consolation and bringing peace to others, very beautiful. So we look forward to talking with Maria. Here we are on St. Nicholas Day, Jeanne. Yeah. So did you get coal or candy?
I'm not telling the bishop. But you'll hear about it in my
feast
confession.
Day for many of our countries, obviously the Italians with his remains at Bari, Italy, and many others, but thinking of children, the way children are our most precious gift that God gives to us. And I appreciate my staff who are so generous. They do the decoration of the rectory for me, partly because we do a little filming, pre-recorded my Christmas message. So the only decoration I do is I get out my St. Nicholas statue and place it in my office. It's a very beautiful, precious one to me, but and officially says Advent is here. And
you're not going to put your shoes outside your office door?
I think, for the sake of the environment, we don't want it to be a hazmat area as well. But and then also looking forward today, I'm blessed to officiate the wedding of Maria Haas and Andrew Schwartz at the Basilica of St. John, Maria's Parish. So kind of a beautiful way. I don't know if I'll be able to wear red or we'll wear white for the wedding or not. But things are obviously feasts are cooking forward. St. Boniface will be there to celebrate Mass at Westphalia, not St. Boniface, Waukee. On Sunday tomorrow, and bless their expanded Heritage Center, a project, labor of love for Ron Roseman and principal people there at St. Boniface, Westphalia. Mass at Our Lady of Grace in Griswold, which will also have its own kind of bittersweet celebration, the great faith and legacy there, but now merging with Saints Peter and Paul in Atlantic, the parish. So I think some heavy hearts, but hopefully God's grace and peace will be with them. And then on Monday, yes, it is the Feast of the Immaculate Conception, our national patroness. Yes, it is. It's still a day of obligation, though it falls on a Monday. I get to finally celebrate with the Dowling Catholic community in the morning, so the whole student body and the staff, and then also at St. Ambrose midday. And then I'll be up at Our Lady's Immaculate Heart on Monday night to share something of the message on hope, kind of thinking about the Jubilee Year of Hope, which is reaching its crescendo here. And we'll conclude in our diocese, as other dioceses, on December 28th, the Feast of the Holy Family. That way in which all the graces of walking together, accompanying each other, knowing God's reconciling love and the way in which he unfolds us. And then the ultimate conclusion on the Feast of the Epiphany at St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. So a lot happening. And if there are still some young men, high school age to 25, the rumblings in their heart, the Andrew dinner again at the Basilica of St. John on Tuesday the 9th. Not too late. Place. You can just show up. Maybe it's kind of nice to give us a heads up by calling Kathy Jordan or Father Ross Parker at the vocations office at the diocese. But you're welcome to come 5:30, a holy half hour. Father Reed Flood will give us a little message, feed us with some spiritual nourishment. And then I think the KCs are going to roll out quite a feast, but then just a table conversation and a panel discussion. People like Monsignor Beeson, others, Father Reed, myself, thinking and giving our perspectives on priesthood. And I think we saw that germinate some who then took that next step. And so it's really, I think, an inspiring moment. And of course, then later on, we'll be doing the Vocation Discernment Retreat in Griswold at the Jesuit Creighton Retreat Center there from the 19th to the 21st. That one we would ask that you formally contact the diocese for that. So many blessings as well. But as we anticipate with Maria, just the way in which Christmas, stirs us, stirs the angels and the shepherds to sing glory to God in the highest. And even us who maybe not be quite on perfect pitch, Catholics can sing and should do so with gusto and grace. But still, in many quarters of the world, the music welling up in mothers' and fathers' heart is a sad lament as they mourn the death of their children, not only through war, famine, inadequate medical care, but the mysterious ways in which, and that's part of the gravity and the heaviness of the cross, when there is no explanation forthcoming, and yet the life does not migrate into the world, but migrates into the halls of heaven.
And with that, we're going to take a quick break. And when we return, we will be visiting with Maria Campbell, founder of Miscarriage Ministry. You're listening to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen on the Iowa Catholic Radio Network and the Spirit Catholic Radio Network. Welcome back to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen. We're welcoming Maria Campbell from the Basilica and founder of Miscarriage Ministry.
Sorry to step on your line.
That's okay.
Jeanne.
That's okay.
I'll go to confession. But no, just the way in which this year the Feast of the Holy Innocents will not occur. It's subsumed of the Sunday, the Feast of the Holy Family, December 28th. But that reading that is usually proclaimed then from Jeremiah chapter 31, the end of Rachel's mourning. Thus says the Lord, and Ramah has heard the sound of sobbing, bitter weeping. Rachel mourns for her children. She refuses to be consoled for her children. They are no more. That heaviness of heart, not only through the persecutions or other ways in which children's lives are not reverenced and cherished as something sacred, but the ways in which, yes, they are reverenced, as seen as gift, and yet by whatever, we don't call it an act of God so much, but the mysterious workings of nature, that the pregnancy doesn't come to full term. So, Maria Campbell, welcome today. Not trying to start with a heavy note.
Oh, it's all good.
You do radiate joy and bring your presence, I think, as one who accompanies women and couples and families in the event of miscarriage. So we'd love to hear more about this and just maybe kind of how for yourself, has this been something rumbling in your heart for a while? And what was the genesis of all of this?
Oh, great question. There is a little bit of background here, so I'll make it short and sweet as much as I can. So Deacon Mark and I have had some losses of our own before we had the 2 living children that we have now. We did lose 2 early miscarriage losses is what we experienced, and went on to have 2 healthy children. And then our last child was stillborn about 13 years ago. At 26 weeks, I delivered her, and to say life-changing is kind of an understatement, but definitely life-changing, faith-changing, rocked our world.
3 of your 5 children.
So we have 3 in heaven. Yeah, I always say, our goal as parents is to get our kids to heaven, and we have 3 there. So, hey,
let's not accelerate this.
So, no. And so, from that point on, I knew, we were kind of thrust deeper into our faith, and I knew that I was just starting to kind of understand the whole suffering teachings of the church, and I knew that God would somehow use this suffering that we were going through. I just didn't know how. I just kept saying, I'm willing. You let me know when it's time, what you need me to do. And so for 13 years, I've been just open to that, just knowing that there was something stirring, that I needed to use this experience. And I was able to in many ways. People have come to me throughout those years just needing support, and there's just no support you can get like the support from someone who's been there and walked that journey. And so,
may I just inject here, when
Sure.
the first miscarriage and then another one, before you brought a child to term, you said, that you go deeper in your faith, but that's not the automatic response for everybody.
For sure.
I mean, it could feel kind of alienating from God, right? Or anger,
Absolutely.
all the range of emotions that grief would evoke in us as well. And was there any of that for you and Deacon Mark? And were you always on the same page, or was it did it put any kind of chill between you?
Oh, for sure. Good question. So
you don't ask light questions.
No, you don't. You jump right into it. So I would say in those early days when we had those early losses, there was so much we didn't know about the teachings of the church, about our rights as parents, even to even be able to claim those babies' remains, have a burial, have a name. We didn't know any of those things. And so our experience back then was very different from the last experience that we had. And so I would say we were in different places. We were just both trying to figure this out. Not to mention, we were having infertility issues. I always thought I'd have a lot of kids. We thought we'd have this big family. And then this happened. And that was our first experience with pregnancy, was loss. And our second experience with pregnancy was loss. And you start to think, is this ever going to happen? Is this going to be a reality for us or not? And so, I would say we really struggled through those times. That's a whole other story. But then,
dare we allow ourselves to become pregnant again?
Right. Absolutely.
And when you were pregnant.
Right. Yeah. Then it's always that kind of, gosh, is this real? Is this going to continue? You're kind of always second guessing what the outcome's going to be like. So I feel tremendously blessed that we have 2 healthy children here on this side of heaven. And so by the time we got to the point of having our miscarriage or our stillbirth, we were in a completely different place in our faith. And I would say God had been preparing us for that time. And I would even say from the moment we knew something was wrong to the moment when they couldn't find the heartbeat, our first instinct was to pray. And that was not something that was our first instinct many years ago when we lost the first two. So definitely God had been changing our hearts. And I would say in that moment, in that whole experience of stillbirth, I could see God revealed to me what he had been doing all this time, why we met certain people, why we went through these certain experiences to get to this very moment. And it was just a huge surrender to say, I am not in control of this, and God is going to use this for good. I don't know how, I don't know why, but now that I see where he has prepared me for all of these things going forward, it helped me to see this is for a purpose too. This is for a reason. And every moment in my life now, I try to live that and just wondering, what's he preparing me for? He's always preparing me for something, and he always makes such good out of it, even when it doesn't make sense to me, even when I don't like it. And when it hurts a lot, he's always preparing me for something. And so
I just note, and I'm not a medical professional, but that you took great care to make the distinction. And I could see where that's very clear in some cases between miscarriage and stillbirth. But would those not coincide as describing the same situation at times?
Yes and no. So prior to 20 weeks gestation would be considered a miscarriage.
Okay.
Unfortunately, they are treated a certain way. There's not always the same care given when you have an early loss like that. Past 20 weeks is considered a stillborn. A death certificate is issued. There's more understanding of kind of the process we would go through with that. You deliver a child that is, I went through labor. My milk came in. Like you experience all the childbirth things, but your child is not alive when that happens. And so there is a difference to some degree, but at the same time, it's all the same. It's a child. We know that's a child. And so physically, though, things are different a little bit. Mm-hmm. At the same time, early miscarriage is very painful. It is going through birth too. It's just a very tiny child. Mm-hmm. So there's not as much physical, change that happens as it is when you're later in pregnancy or even up to the day of birth, for a full term stillbirth. So.
I don't expect you to answer this question. I don't want to get wrapped in medical details, but as medical care has been able ever more to have viability, and that horizon seems to be moving earlier and earlier, 21, 22 weeks. I wonder if that definition will also shift as we probably will approach 20 or weeks or earlier than that.
I hope so, I guess, in many ways. I hope so.
It would be recognized in the reality. This is
this
is a child with an inestimable dignity, a child of God, a person.
Absolutely.
In a person.
Yeah, so. For sure. So.
Yeah. So, you're speaking with the benefit of reflection and time, the grace that you and Deacon Mark and others have had. Is that something you're going to try and hold out to people as part of the hope, or is that just to be with couples who've suffered this loss and maybe allow that to unfold as part of the narrative? And
so for a long time, yes, I was kind of just being available. People would find, God would just send me people if they needed to be walked with in that journey. Up until last year at the National Eucharistic Congress, he made it pretty clear what I was supposed to do with this, and it was supposed to become a ministry. I met a vendor that was at the Congress, and she creates these totes, very practical totes full of supplies. When a family finds themselves in the process of miscarriage, there are practical things that would really help, things that we didn't know about, things we never had. Unfortunately, to be kind of just out there with it, like a lot of times early miscarriages are flushed. You don't know that you can actually grab those remains and keep them, and with a lot of dignity and respect, have a proper burial. We didn't know that. And so part of this was just put on my heart so heavy of that's a first step. We can give some practical things. I can at least bring this to the Basilica, knowing that we have a thriving parish of so many young families, so many pregnant women. There's going to be, statistically, some of those will be lost. And so that was my first step, was just to come back and say, okay, how can we do this? This is a very small step. And from there, many things have kind of snowballed. That was, I talked to the Knights when we came back and just presented it to them and saying, it's going to take some money. I'm willing to be the point person. I'm willing to do all the things if you will fund it. And they didn't even question it. They said, absolutely, how much do you need? Let us know and we'll take care of it. And so that's what happened. And so then that snowballed into kind of just more people knowing about it, people reaching out to me saying, hey, we want to get this at our parish. We want to get this at our parish. I want to help with this. And what can we do? And
the woman who was the inspiration, you made a oblique reference to Rebecca Harpring, founder of Covenant Resources Miscarriage Ministry. Did she kind of shepherd you through this, like how to get started? Or
she's amazing. She's been through this whole experience herself. She created this nonprofit for this purpose, and so she's kind of done all the back work that I didn't have to do. I could just purchase the supplies. She coached us through. She's been there every step of the way, all the way through to where we are now. Not to get ahead of ourselves too far, but in talking about the opportunity to have a place to lay those babies to rest, that is a very difficult thing that I knew about, but I didn't realize how difficult it is until I started walking with some women who were like, we don't know if this is our forever home. Where are we going to bury this baby? Right? And so it's very expensive too to have to purchase a full burial plot. An adult-sized burial plot is not necessary for a small child like that, but that's kind of your option unless you go to some place like La Crosse, the Memorial of the Unborn. A lot of people have been pointing that direction because it is a place, a very much respectful place to entomb.
And beautiful.
And absolutely beautiful. But
is
it's not here.
Is that associated with the Guadalupe Shrine? Or is that
it is.
Yeah.
It is.
Part of it.
It is a part of it. It's beautiful. I have several friends who have babies there that are entombed in an entire wall that is for that purpose. And there's just an amazing statue of Mary there holding several babies. I have a little mini of it even because it just rocked my world when I saw that. And so that was kind of the only option unless you had private property here. You know, some families do have farmland. They have mom and dad's land that they're able to do a private burial. Mark and I have assisted with some of those. That is an option here in Iowa, but it doesn't work for everybody.
Now, is that for the babies that are less than 20 weeks or whatever that...
It would be for anyone.
Okay.
I mean, for us, when we had our stillbirth, our baby Sophia, the first piece of real estate that we owned was a burial plot. We had to purchase a full burial plot to bury her because there really isn't a place to do a smaller infant like that doesn't need an entire plot.
But you couldn't bury her on your own personal property?
Not past 20 weeks.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah. So that is another distinction as far as burial goes.
The state's laws with vaults and things kick in or not?
Past 20 weeks, since there's a death certificate issued, there does have to be a certain way of burial and all of that. Yeah. So prior to, you are able to, state by state, county by county, sometimes it depends on those burial laws and rules and things, but that is an option here.
Now, as a young priest, I accompanied a family that suffered a miscarriage very early on, and yet they were able to retain the remains. And so they buried them, and we had a little committal service at the grave of an older family relative. They opened up that grave and placed the remains there. So that was an option.
That is another option. We've actually had some doors open here in the diocese that hopefully you and I can visit about sometime. I've spoken with Justin about this too. At the diocese, there is a little cemetery in Dallas Center that's a little Catholic cemetery, and there's a lot of interest there in having kind of what we might call like a little souls cemetery within a cemetery that is designated area just for this purpose. And so we have a dream, myself and some of the other women who have stepped up to help with this, to have a few of those throughout the diocese, maybe even the state, to be able to give people options and say, okay, this is an option for burial here, 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 and let them have those choices because that is a very difficult thing when you find yourself in that place. So, and most of these families that are experiencing this type of loss, they're young families. They don't have $1,000 sitting around to buy a burial plot, right? And so that is going to be some of that conversation if we're able to move forward on that. So
I'm at your disposal to have that conversation.
Thank you. I was hoping so.
It's not going to require a lot of discernment, I don't think.
Thank you.
So just, again, I'm sorry if I'm getting too much into details, but the kits themselves are mainly to secure the remains. Is that what they are?
Yes.
Or is there
if a woman experiences
ministerial
a miscarriage,
resources?
Both and. So we do provide resources. The kit that we get from the Covenant Resources Miscarriage Ministries, it includes all of the practical things like a strainer, a burial bag even that's made out of old bridal gowns that people have donated, medical grade little containers to actually store the remains in, and then pictures even that kind of give you an idea based on weeks what to expect. A lot of people have no idea, what do I even look for if I, when I pass at home and things like that. It also gives resources through a Catholic lens of what are your rights? You do have the right. If you have to go into the hospital for a D&C, you absolutely have the right to request the remains of your baby to go home with you. They do not have to be kept by the hospital and considered medical waste or lumped in with a bunch of other, situations like that. And so,
are there any instances where the hospital wants to participate in a research program to detect causes or not?
I have heard
they want
that.
to secure the remains for at least a period or
Correct.
not?
I have heard that, but at the end of the day, it's up to the family to decide. We have the right to decide whether we want to participate in that. For our stillbirth, even, we had the option to have an autopsy done, and we chose not to. We said, what would be the purpose in that for us? We figured this may be the last of our children anyway. We chose not to. It was offered to us, and we chose not to. So, yeah, definitely.
Well, during this Advent season, we think so much of how beings come into the world and the Immaculate Conception of Mary, obviously Jesus, the Annunciation in March, but coming to term and all that surrounds that. So, very worthy topic, and we look forward to resuming the conversation shortly.
We'll take that quick break. We'll be back with Maria Campbell, founder of Miscarriage Ministry. For those interested in bringing Miscarriage Ministry into their own parish or wish to support that ministry, visit covenantresources.org. You're listening to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen on the Iowa Catholic Radio Network and the Spirit Catholic Radio Network. Welcome back to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen.
So, Maria, this is a relatively new ministry, and so the experiences continue to mount, and the perspectives obviously enhancing your wisdom and your mindfulness of where people are at. How about the presence of the fathers and the dads in all this? Is that something that they're experiencing, the trauma of this and the grief?
Absolutely. I think it's something that isn't probably talked about enough, because both parents do go through that grief process very differently, because obviously the woman is going through some physical things too. We learned after our stillbirth that I always say it was kind of like we were both on the same roller coaster, but different cars, because one would be up, one would be down. We were just on this constant, like, where are we at today? And we were rarely in the same place at the same time. And so one thing that I know, at least I can say we offer at the Basilica, is I've been acquiring books and resources for a lending library as well. And I've had some donations for those, and several of those do pertain specifically to men and fathers through that process, how to support their wives, how to deal with their own grief, how to go through that, all from a Catholic perspective. So those are some resources available, something that definitely needs to be talked about as well.
Is Deacon Mark involved in this, or this is more your ministry? He's got many things on his plate.
We both have many things we do
so.
together. This has been one I've kind of been spearheading with 100% of his support and guidance as needed. But it's more been something that I've kind of just felt really called to do. I don't know that he has a lot of capacity to do.
Are couples networking? Are you support groups beginning to form?
That's a tricky thing. It would be nice. I know there's been a couple of attempts for that, but it is such a kind of ebb and flow as to how many people need it, how many people would use that service. And
I would think too, they're at different points. If they've just had the miscarriage, they're one of that kind of support. But
right,
if it's
and
been
then
a few
ongoing,
months,
it can be a little bit different. So one resource I would put out there is just that Hamilton's, the one especially on West Town Parkway, they also have
the funeral home.
The funeral home, Hamilton's Funeral Home. They have a very huge lending library there, not specifically Catholic, obviously, but they have a lot of books and resources. They have some memorial services there too. And Buffy, I would say contact Buffy at Hamilton. She's a wonderful resource if a family just needs that support and they're not finding it elsewhere. So the other thing,
her name's come up in national conversations.
Oh, really?
Actually, Buffy, they were aware of her.
I've sat down at a table with her. She's an amazing resource. We sat down and she actually donated some of the books for our lending library, but she's just a phenomenal resource for all the details and questions that we might have when it comes to that experience. So, and then from a spiritual point, I would say another part of our conversation is just looking at how can we get more consistent about offering maybe a remembrance mass annually. I have a priest willing to do that. We have people willing to help spearhead that. Just to have, I know for us, there was one after we had our stillbirth. There was a mass that the diocese had, and that was the first time that I realized we could go back and name our first two babies that we lost early on. I didn't know that still at that point. And so that was such a healing opportunity to be able to write names down and offer those intentions for our babies in heaven. And so things like that for ongoing support, spiritually, emotionally, obviously a big part of this.
And again, to accent that something you mentioned, that the Iowa Catholic Conference was very supportive of legislation that a death certificate would be issued as part of the spiritual healing and consolation that's there, to name and to proclaim that this is a person. Again, the church, though, and again, we get into theological waters here as well. These are persons. created by God, loved by God infinitely. Obviously, God has an eternal destiny for each of us, but that we would not baptize an already deceased baby in this way, but trusting, that while baptism is requisite for salvation, that God will supply in His great mercy and wisdom is that. So our confidence and hope that behold the face again of the one who was given to us. So
definitely. Just
real quick, as we're wrapping up, what are the other 3 parishes presently involved in this ministry?
They're all St. John's. We have St. John's Basilica, St. John Norwalk, and St. John's Adel, and then Saints John and Paul in Altoona. Those are all kind of the main places right now.
Well, the beloved disciple is standing by here. So he may just
be our patron saint of this ministry, but you don't have to have a St. John in your name in order to have this kit. And so contact me or contact them if you want to do that.
Well, his feast day is coming up at the end of December. May he continue to inspire and intercede for you and all who are participating in this ministry. God bless you. Thank you, Maria, for your time.
Thank you.
You can hear Making It Personal with Bishop William Joensen every week on Iowa Catholic Radio and iowacatholicradio.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Making It Personal is provided by Sarah Vocations Ministry. Learn more at joinserra.org.